Gallahorn! 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 Gallahorn!
When was the last time you heard anyone get that excited about our old pal Zur? The guy who used to bring such excitement to the community, you'd almost be mistaken to think he was the Santa Claus of Destiny, since he basically brought Christmas with him each and every weekend. But Zur, like many of our beloved characters from Destiny 1, is still a broken shadow of his former self, despite Destiny 2 being over 3 years old. He's gotten better over the years, with his weekly stock having random rolls, a nice faded engram available to help round out your exotic collection, and most recently, a weekly quest that grants an exotic cipher, enabling players to acquire potent exotics from the Monument to Lost Lights in the tower. But his usefulness ends there. There is so much more that could be done with this tentacle-faced bastard, and I think it's a shame that his potential has been left to waste. For new and returning players, while he does offer a nice catch-up mechanic for your collections, he could be so much more, especially as Destiny 2 has evolved so much in the past few years, and Zur could be leveraged as your one-stop shop to help build up your arsenal. And for in-game players, Zur offers almost nothing at all, except for a weekly exotic engram that is likely to be a piece of armor that you don't want, and a cipher that can be traded in for another exotic engram, which is also likely to be something that you don't want. Zur could instead be used as a driver to hunt down god rolls on the exotic armor pieces that you do want. In this video, I'm going to lay out how I would go about improving Zur and bringing him to modern day relevance. We're going to discuss how Zur can bring excitement to everyone each and every weekend, no matter if you're a new light or a grizzled ancient. It's time for the Santa Claus of Destiny to return. Let's jump in. So, let's jump right into how we can make Zur matter for endgame players once again. To do this, we need to build off of Zur's primary function today, that is, the 3 pieces of exotic armor that he sells each week. Zur does bring the occasional god roll piece of armor, but more often than not, it's a meh roll at best and a horrible roll at worst. Seriously, how can you sell a grenade-focused exotic with 2 discipline? Come on, Bungie. What I would recommend is adding a new set of items for purchase each week called Exotic Blueprints. Essentially, how this would work is that for each exotic armor piece that Zur has for sale, he would then also sell a blueprint of each armor piece. This blueprint would allow you to grind just about any activity in the game, with more expedient progression coming from in-game activities, in order to earn a random roll of a targeted exotic armor piece. This would bring back the anticipation for Zur each week for in-game players, because you never know when it's about to be a weekend in which you can farm a meta exotic like Stompies for PvP or Phoenix Protocol for PvE. Now, to make progress on an exotic blueprint, I would implement the following amount of points for each activity to progress this quest. First off, a full raid would grant 20 points, and would be the fastest way to complete a blueprint. I considered breaking this down into raid encounter completions, but I feel that most teams would just devolve into checkpoint farming the easiest encounter of one of the raids. I'm looking at you, Deepstone Crypt opening. The next thing I would do is I would have dungeons and Grandmaster Nightfalls each grant 10 points, meaning you would only need to do 2 of either activity to finish the blueprint, as these are kind of the next man up after raids when it comes to in-game PvE activities. I would then have Master Nightfalls grant 7 points, so it would take you 3 runs here to complete the blueprint. The Legend Nightfall would grant 5 points, meaning you would need 4 completions to complete the blueprint. Then, the Match-Made Hero Nightfall would grant 4 points, as would a Win in Iron Banner, making either of these activities take 5 completions to finish the blueprint. I would have an Iron Banner loss grant 3 points, meaning if you were grinding out a session of Iron Banner, it would only take a maximum of 7 Iron Banner games to finish the blueprint. And finally, a completion of any basic Strike, Crucible match, or Gambit match would grant 2 points, meaning you'd need to complete 10 of these core playlist activities to finish the blueprint. That way, our solo players each week would have an opportunity to grind as well. Now, it's important to note that I intentionally excluded trials from this list, as honestly, I wouldn't want to see teams farm wins early on in cards, considering the debacle that happened in the second weekend of trials last year, when good players were farming early card wins to get rolls of the shotgun Astral Horizon. So let's just avoid a repeat of that, shall we? And finally, the cost of an exotic blueprint would be high, requiring an Ascendant Shard to pick one up. This would cement exotic blueprint farming as an endeavor afforded by Xur to players that are deep in the endgame grind and are looking for not just specific armor pieces, but specific rolls on specific armor pieces. And unlike the current Fated engram that is locked to once per account per week, these exotic blueprints would be infinitely farmable, so long as the player continues to have Ascendant Shards for our old pal Xur. Now that we've made Xur a staple of the endgame grind, we need to make him better for newer and returning players. We'll accomplish this by adding another new row of purchases to Xur that I'm dubbing Items of Fate. As such, I would continue to have Xur sell his weekly Fated exotic engram, as this is an excellent way for players to slowly complete their exotic collection week over week. I would then add a new Fated Eververse engram available for purchase. This Fated Bright engram would contain an Eververse ornament, emote, or accessory from a previous Destiny 2 season that the player has not yet acquired. The cost for this would be 500 Bright Dust and would be a potential weekly bargain compared to the cost of many items in the Eververse. I'm looking at you, 3,000 plus Bright Dust for one exotic emote. This would help players to complete their cosmetic collections, as right now, our ordinary Bright engrams quite often give dupes of ships or sparrows or shaders that no one wants, instead of granting something that the player has never earned before. Now, the next new item on the docket would be a Fated Eververse shader, which would contain a new Eververse shader from a previous Destiny 2 season that the player has not yet acquired. The cost for this would be 40 Bright Dust, which is in line with the cost of other shaders within the Eververse. And with so many amazing shaders in the Eververse backlog, this item of fate would help Guardians everywhere step up their fashion game. And finally, I would include two final items of fate: a Fated Charged with Light mod and a Fated Warmind Cell mod. Right now, if you didn't play throughout every season during year 3 of Destiny 2, the only way to acquire Charged with Light or Warmind Cell mods is to pray that Banshee sells one that you don't own. However, not only does Banshee go days or weeks at a time between selling Charged with Light or Warmind Cell mods at all, but when he does, the chances are high it's going to be a mod that you already own. With my update to Xur, he would be the man to visit to round out your collection of Charged with Light and Warmind Cell mods, as he'd allow you to earn one of each mod type that you don't yet own each week. And before you say, "But Kujay, you can't just have Xur give away in-game mods," shut it. There are 28 Charged with Light mods and 18 Warmind Cell mods. If you were a new player, you would still need to visit Xur for over half a year to acquire all of these combat mods. But for returning players that, say, missed part of Season of the Worthy, well, now you'd have a clear path to acquire the Warmind Cell mods you're missing within a few weeks or months, and allow you to then fully engage with all the awesome combat systems that Bungie has added to the game since Shadowkeep. Now that we've upgraded Xur for newer and returning players, we need to add one final row of inventory to Xur that would help players unlock even more of their exotic arsenal, from missing exotic catalysts to old quest exotics from the Monument to Lost Lights in the tower. This final row of inventory would also grant a couple of weekly discounted gifts from the 9 to enable players to masterwork more pieces of their arsenal more easily. So, the first item from this part of Xur's inventory would be a weekly quest to earn a new exotic catalyst that the player has not yet earned. This quest, however, would only grant catalysts from the pool that drops from completing strikes, Crucible matches or from enemies in the open world. Think of the Hardlight, Suros Regime, and Crimson Catalysts, which drop from Strikes, Crucible, and the open world, respectively. This exotic catalyst weekly quest would progress in an identical fashion to the exotic blueprint quests that we talked about earlier, with raids being the most efficient way to complete the quest, but still allowing solo players to complete this by simply engaging with the core playlists. Now, the next item from this part of Xur's inventory would be the Xenology quest that Xur currently offers. However, the current Xenology quest is honestly a bit overly grindy for players that don't have a clanmate to team up with, and as such, I'd change the progression requirements again to match the exotic blueprint and weekly exotic catalyst quests. This would mean it would take a max of 10 strikes to complete the new version of the Xenology quest, as opposed to the 21 strikes you need to do today if you are running solo. And the Xenology quest would still grant an exotic cipher, which you could use to unlock more old quest exotics from the Monument to Lost Lights, or to let you purchase a second faded exotic engram from Xur each week. And now, the next new item I'd have Xur sell would be a single weekly Ascendant Shard at a greatly reduced price to what Banshee offers at the tower. This would allow newer and returning players to be able to easily masterwork a piece of armor each week, which, especially in light of armor sunsetting, is something that the game should absolutely facilitate. This would allow more players the opportunity to experiment with more advanced armor builds, especially multi-layered charged with light and Warmind cell builds. Armor 2.0 was honestly a huge success in terms of loadout flexibility and build crafting, but it has been gatekept behind an Ascendant Shard economy that is hostile to all but the grindiest in-game players. This change to Xur would help even the playing field and let more people try out one of Destiny's best features. And finally, I'd add back an old fan favorite to Xur from the Destiny 1 days, Glass Needles. Now, a Glass Needle would allow you to change the base stat point total and the stat point allocation on an exotic armor piece of your choosing. Essentially, this would mean that you'd get one chance each week to get a better roll on the exotic armor piece that you do care about. I can already hear all the stompy crutches like myself crying out with joy at the prospect of this. Seriously, screw you, Khepri Sting. No one wants you. Now, the cost for the weekly Glass Needle wouldn't be as high as the exotic blueprints, but it would be a slight step up from the weekly Ascendant Shard. I think that 3 enhancement prisms would be a price both accessible enough for most players, but a little on the pricier side to justify how impactful the ability would be to get a new roll of a meta exotic like Stompies or Phoenix Protocol every week. And just like that, we've come to the end of another video. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed this latest installment into how we can continue to evolve Destiny 2. I really miss the days of looking forward to Xur each weekend, and with the changes I described, I know that I'd once again be glued to Twitch every Friday at Reset. And with all the heartburn felt by players over Banshee these days about the laughably bad mod sale system that he has, I think Xur would quickly become one of the most beloved characters in the game by newer and returning players. So, for next week's video, I've got a couple of topics in mind. I'm thinking that the next 3 videos will be about improving Gambit, modernizing Iron Banner, and one on expanding the role and relevance of dungeons. Let me know which of these 3 topics sounds the most intriguing to you down in the comments section below. And as always, if you want to support this channel, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. And just so you guys are aware, I do stream on Twitch every weekend on Saturdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, so if you ever have any questions that you'd like me to answer in person, I'll be there. I've been saying it every week, but thank you so much for the insane support on these videos. It has been a wild ride. Have a great week, guys, and I hope to catch you all in the next one. This has been your host, Kujay. Cheers.